Welcome to the latest edition of our AT Kearney Procurement and Analytics Solutions, The Wave of the Future podcast series. I'm Helen Clegg, and I'm joined today by Barbie Kaiser in Washington, D.C. Barbie is an information resources management consultant specializing in web content development and strategic information planning and practices around the globe. As well as running her own consulting business, Barbie has taught competitive intelligence, knowledge and information systems to MBA classes at the Johns Hopkins University Carey Business School. Today, Barbie joins me to talk about how professionals from all walks of life can take advantage of news and social media tools, not only to keep abreast of their environment, but also to widen their horizons, which can ultimately spark ideas and lead to innovation. Barbie, welcome to the podcast. It's good to have you here. I want to start by talking about the need for monitoring one's environment, both from a personal and corporate perspective. Why is it important to bother with such an activity?
Thanks for having me, Helen. Yes, I think that it's really important to monitor things that you already know are important. So from a business side, you're always going to monitor the industry you operate in, the markets you serve, your customers or clients. You might want to monitor different products that you're interested in. But we tend to do these monitoring activities on a different scale than we do our personal lives. And I think that separation of personal versus business, that line is sort of being blurred. And so the way that we've moved in the personal realm from purchasing tickets for an event or watching the best price for a particular product as we're moving down the aisles in a store, or as we want to look at the latest news about sports, for example. The way we do that is being infused into the business world. So we're looking at not only how we monitor things that we've already thought are important, but taking a broader approach. How do we scan the environment for change? And it's in that instance of change that's going to present an opportunity for us to call a client and offer our services. So I'm looking at all of the things that are going to bring new tools and new resources across my radar screen so I can think about things and unleash that creative, innovative force within me so that I can say, this particular topic, this particular article talked a little bit about a new technology, and I bet we can use that in our work here at this particular company. So I'm always looking at this change and how I can bring new things into my field of vision.
So, Barbie, what should users of these new web-based and social media tools consider when they're thinking about which tools to use or which tools to use for monitoring their environment? Have you got any ideas on that, or can you share your perspective with us?
I think the most important thing is to begin with the purpose. Why do I need or want to collect material on this subject? Some things are going to be more urgent than others, so I'm going to make sure that I have a delivery mode that alerts me when anything changes. And some are more, maybe a laid back approach would work. So, yes, I'm kind of interested in them, but I can read it at the end of the week and I don't have to think about it right now. So, this push and pull becomes really different. I might be looking at the format of delivery. Some things I want a lot of dense text, others I can get a paragraph or so and get the gist of it and either decide to read it later or to move on. And I'm also looking at tools in terms of what I want to see, what my team needs to be looking at, and tools that are best for my organization. So there are three levels of tools that I'm looking at to use in everyday existence.
And Barbie, what are the benefits of using these tools? Why employ them?
The first thing is convenience. I'm always looking for something that's going to save me time and really frustration levels. There's nothing worse than clicking on a link and it takes a long time to open. And for some people, that's a barrier. They're never going to open it. Think about how you share things with your team. I look a lot at articles that I want to share, and if there's no feature that I can just click for tweet this, then I really don't share it with people, and I might know it, but people who follow me, who want to know about these things, I know they're interested, and I think that that's really important. So convenience, time saving, personalization is another area. I want to make sure that these systems learn what I want to see, what interests me. So when I can vote, yes, this is good, no, this is not good, and then see things that are more in tune with my interests, that's really important. So I'm always looking for the tools that are adding these kinds of features, not only for me, but for others who may have different interests in terms of the types of materials that they want to see. Some may be more engineering oriented, some may be more politically oriented, some may be more functionally oriented. And the other thing is they may all have different experience and comfort levels using technology. So some are on the really easy side of the scale, and some are more complicated and may not be for the novice user. So I want an array of tools that I can use that I can recommend to others.
And I think from my perspective, Barbie, what's really great about all these new tools is that they almost enable you to read so much more information by way of headlines, articles, summaries. And I think that's what I like about them. One example I had was I have Flipboard, and I was flipping through some articles today, and I came across one that really sparked an idea and made me think, yes, that's something that we could take and do something with. But if I hadn't have set up Flipboard and looked at all these articles in such an easy format, I wouldn't have had that idea. So I like the way that it sort of makes it so much easier for you to assimilate information very, very quickly. So, Barbie, which tools would you recommend for monitoring a topic or taking in different topics of information on a subject? Do you have any that you would recommend to people starting out on this?
I have a few that I use often, and we'll talk about them in a second. But what I wanted to say is that people should get comfortable using all the tools because you never know when your favorite tool is going to go away. Think about Google Reader and how many people use that, and all of a sudden, well, it's no longer around. So people had to move to other RSS readers. And I did too, but I find that I'm not using them anymore and my interests have really shifted. So now I'm looking at tools that are not only gathering things that I already know are important. So I know that I want to read this particular author or anything that's printed in this particular journal or anything that comes out of this particular association. But now I want to see who's curating material from sources that I don't normally see, and I want to follow them. So I'm looking toward them as being the source of my material that I'm going to bring in front of me. And some of those tools are really interesting tools to use. Two of my favorites are Paper.li, Paper.li, and Scoop.it, Scoop.it, are two of my favorites. And I bet that people listening to this podcast will actually have seen these if they're on LinkedIn or Twitter, because many of the shortened URLs actually take you to people's curated papers. So what people do are look for items that they want to curate in their particular realm. So, for example, if you're on Paper.li or Scoop.it or even Sulia, which is another tool, you could pop keywords into the search mechanism: procurement, acquisition, supply chain management, and purchasing, and see what comes up and who's tracking those and where are they pulling resources. So you may find that they're pulling resources from all of the accounting or consulting firms, from all of the major business schools that publish in this area, from all of the trade journals and associations and some of the local press. So, for example, when I'm looking for things in French, I might look at Tada Web, where a lot of the curated papers are by people who are located in Canada or France. And so they bring a whole new level of resources in front of my eyes and onto my radar screen. And you never know when some of these tools are going to just disappear and no longer be available. And particularly when they are acquired by these larger companies, the elements, the functionality of the tool that you liked tends to go away. So I want to get comfortable with all of these resources, and I want to get comfortable following people who are always on that cutting edge. And I may not look at everything that they suggest, but if I can follow 3 or 4 people who really know what new tool is on the horizon, and I just familiarize myself with it, that's the route to go.
Right, and I think by doing that, Barbie, by looking at those sources that you wouldn't otherwise look at, for example, you just mentioned at our web for Canadian and French resources, that's the way that you get that different information coming across your desktop and really, bringing a different perspective to what you're looking at or what you might be thinking of and giving you that hope, that's that spark or that idea. And I particularly like the idea of really trying to get comfortable with as many resources as possible because, as you rightly say, you just don't know when those resources are going to go away. So, Barbie, as we come to the end of this podcast, what do you think the future looks like for news and social media tools? What changes should users look out for from your perspective?
I think there are 2 things that I'm looking at in this 21st century look and feel. One is visualization tools. So anything that presents the material that I'm gathering that helps me make sense of it. So it might be how they categorize things or how they note connections from one resource to another. I particularly actually want somebody to say, okay, now that we've told you this, here's what you should go off and do. So I want to make sure that anything that visually helps me make sense of what's going on in the world today, that's a tool I want to look at. So visualization is one. The second thing I'm really concentrating on is sharing material with my team. And those teams can change depending upon the function or the topic that I have that I'm dealing with. But there are all sorts of tools that I can get really comfortable with that are mobile that I can share ideas with people. And it doesn't have to be the tools that we used to use that were clunky and seemed to be authoritative. So it said, you will do this particular task during this particular hour. But they're more meant to make sure that people keep involved and aware of what's going on in the world around them. So you want to build your team's information literacy skills and making sure that they're reading in as wide a possible range as you are. So some of the tools that I use, maybe Asana, Asana, or Podio are 2 very interesting tools to use for small teams. It's free. And the presentation and the technology that they're putting in, the functionality that they're putting into these tools are giving me ideas of the functionality that I should be looking at in other tools that I've been using. At the beginning of this question, I said that there were 2 things, but now that I think about it, there are a couple of other classes or resources that I would recommend. And so for the future, I'd look at a whole class of resources that I'm beginning to see that collect all of the material that you have deemed important across all of the social media and put it in one place for you. An example of that right now is Rebel Mouse, Rebel Mouse, and Nuzzle is another one that does a really good job in pulling it all together, putting it in one place so you don't have to check Paper.li and Scoop.it and all of the resources. Anything that you have been tracking comes into there, and it's kind of an interesting look. The other thing to think about is who's curating and how they're curating, and tools that are not only doing this electronically, but also have a human touch. Librarians do this for a living. This is what we've done all our lives. And some of the tools that I've used are really interesting. There's one called Trap.it, Trap.it, that does a really good job because it has people who are looking in each industry for each topic for the best tools that are available, the best resources on the web, the best resources in print, the best resources in video. And they're pulling that all together for you. And that's something that's interesting. Trap.it does another thing that I like very much, where it allows you to brand publish your material so that I can pull it all together and for my organization say, this has the stamp of Barbie Kaiser Inc. right on it. And whether it's A.T. Kearney or another, it's kind of an interesting tool to look at. Unfortunately, it is not free, but that's another piece to think about. Is there somebody behind the scenes helping you who's really intelligent about this work?
So, Barbie, thanks ever so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. It's been really interesting. And on that note, I'd just like to summarize some of the things that I've taken away from what you've been saying. There are 5 things that I'd like to sort of just recap on. The first is that resources need to be based on one's purpose. So you have to think about what it is that you really want to track or find out or get to know. Second, is it a pull or push approach? Third, go for a wide range of sources or increase one's to increase one's reading sphere, and also pushing the envelope and looking at information and topics that are outside of one's normal realm. 4, follow people. I think that's a great idea, and it's so easy to do with the new tools. So let other people do the work for you. There's so many people out there curating newspapers via Paper.li on so many different topics: supply chain, procurement, there's avionics, whatever the topic of interest. There's sure to be someone who's curating information on that. And then 5, lastly, you talked about the continuum of technology and getting comfortable with all the tools because, quite frankly, as you rightly point out, some tools are going to be with us for a long time, but other tools are going to disappear because maybe the funding disappears. So it's a really great idea to get comfortable in as much as one can with as many tools as possible. So, Barbie, thanks ever so much. It's been a pleasure having you as part of our podcast series and as my guest today. I'd also like to thank our production engineer, Tom Klein. Thank you for listening to this edition of The Wave of the Future. If you have any comments on this podcast or have a suggestion for a podcast topic, please share your thoughts via Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @ATKPAS. This has been an A.T. Kearney Procurement and Analytics Solutions podcast production. Join us again soon for our next Wave of the Future podcast.